For the past millennium or so, the Vikings have had quite the reputation, and it hasn't been for their fabulous taste in fabric textures and color palettes. But lately, much has been written exploring the softer side of Vikings. It came as a surprise to a lot of us, but we might just say that the Vikings were far more refined than we ever imagined. The reputation given to them by some foreigners, most often the victims of raids, has stuck with the Vikings for well over 1,000 years, that they were barbarians. The stereotype of barbarians is that they are ignorant, filthy, and brutish. However, we live in an age that prides ourselves on breaking down stereotypes and reevaluating how we look at people. And so, as we as a society have reconsidered how we define the many different people we interact with in this contemporary world, the stereotype of the Viking has recently been given a makeover as well. Far from being filthy brutes, we find that Vikings were actually very well groomed and perhaps even fashion conscious. Just for the sake of perspective, let us consider that for the past century or so, Western society has seen a homogenizing of men's fashion. The business suit as we know it is not that different than its earlier incarnation in the late Victorian era. Mainstream men's haircuts tend to be very similar, discounting subculture and countercultural trends, of course. And while we may sometimes make assumptions about class due to a man's hairstyle, hair itself does not represent class. In other words, the male mechanic, the school teacher, and the CEO likely all have a very similar haircut to, say, Prince Charles. Further, many men today feel self-conscious about being overly concerned about style or fashion, and some men shave their hair clean off rather than facing the dilemma of deciding on a style. Indeed, styling the hair at all, beyond a quick part and comb through, can be seen as not masculine and metrosexual in some circles. So one might assume, based on our contemporary notion, that Vikings, the epitome of the male archetype, wouldn't be very interested in hair. Wrong. Hairstyle was considered important to men of the Viking Age. It could denote class status, as very short hair often marked someone as a slave, or it could be an indicator of someone's profession. A man who engaged in raiding might be cautious of how his hair and beard could be a liability in battle. But, by all accounts, it appears that there was much personal choice and variety in hairstyle and length, as well as in beard style and length. Personal grooming was also expected from individuals in Norse societies during this period. Grooming tools have been unearthed which verify that Viking Age men and women used tweezers, combs, and ear scoops for, scooping out earwax. Another trend that the modern metrosexual man may embrace, while a more macho modern man often eschews, is coloring the hair. In our society, it is predominantly women who dye their hair. There is a growing trend for aging men to consider covering their gray, but is still done less often by men than women, and men tend to stay close to their original hair color. And in our society, many women of all ethnicities and complexions quote-unquote go blonde, whether it looks remotely natural or not. Well, you guessed it, so did the Vikings. Due to medieval accounts as well as archaeological analysis, it is thought that a strong lye soap was used by Vikings for washing, but also for bleaching of the hair. And it was not just the ladies going for that Marilyn Monroe aesthetic. It is recorded that many Viking men bleached their hair and beards blonde also. Celtic men in the audience who are sitting there snickering, don't be so quick to laugh. Apparently, Celtic men were caught doing the same thing red-handed. Yep, Celtic men reddened their hair also with the strong lye soap. I'm imagining a peroxide experiment gone bad, where the poor teenage girl ends up with orange hair instead of blonde. Pliny the Elder recorded, "Soap is the invention of the Gauls and is used to redden the hair. It is made from fat and ashes. The best is beechwood ash and goat fat, the two combined thick and clear." Since we're aiming to break stereotypes here, it should be pointed out that not all Vikings were blonde, just as not all Celts were ginger. Both groups had a good mix of both, as well as just as many brunettes. But it is true that Celtic groups tended to have slightly more redheads on average than others, just as Scandinavians had more blondes. Based on historical accounts about hair coloring, one might speculate that both groups were keenly aware of their respective hair color trends, and may have considered it a mark of their tribal identity, attempting to emphasize their tribal stereotype by altering the color of their hair. Incidentally, Pliny the Elder's next sentence regarding lye soap was this: "Many among the Germans use it, the men more than the women." No comment on German women. The Norse were so keen on weekly cleaning that their word for Saturday, lørdag, means washing day. This was quite irritating to the Anglo-Saxons, because by the time of the Viking raids, the Anglo-Saxons had long been Christianized, a religion which dissuaded these Germanic cousins of the Vikings from regular bathing. John of Wallingford, an English chronicler, lamented that the Danish men's habits of washing and changing their clothes regularly was too strong a temptation for English women. Apparently, many a marriage was ruined and more than one nobleman's daughter lost her virtue to a well-groomed Dane. Not only were they as sparkling fresh as the morning dew, but Viking men were quite the romantics, evidently. When they weren't marauding or inflicting the blood eagle on some poor English chap, Vikings enjoyed a bit of poetry, with love being a popular topic. Professor Judas Jess's book, Viking Poetry of Love and War, was reviewed by Emma Rayner on medievalist.net. She says that, if anything, this book proves that Vikings had a sense of humor. And it seems that love and romance were just as much daily concerns in the Viking Age as they are today. Some of the poetry is just plain silly, if not bordering on the bawdy. One great example is this 10th century gem by Viking poet extraordinaire Egil Skallagrimsson, entitled "The Poet is Past It." I've a crick in my neck and tend to fall on my head. My trouser snake is soft, and my hearing's gone away. Well, too bad for Egil, but his contemporary Ingolf had much better luck. As is explained in the Viking poem, Ingolf is popular with the ladies. All the grown girls wanted to go with Ingolf. Those who were of age, the wee ones were wretched. I too, said the old woman, want to go with Ingolf, as long as I have 2 teeth still wobbling in my gums. And there we have it. Vikings, neat freaks, heartthrobs, comedians. If that doesn't make us second guess our stereotypes about Vikings, I dare say nothing will. My name is Carolyn Emmerich. I write about the history and folk belief of Northern Europe. Please visit my website to learn more.